Hello class! Today we are going to be reviewing and discussing what you read in the chapter about Weber's theory on bureaucracy. Before we delve into the Weber theories, I want to give you a little more information about myself for the sake of transparency. You all know me as an educator. I'm also a mentor, a researcher, a murderer, an alumna of Ball State University. You may say that you and I have a lot in common. I am sure you all have experience educating and mentoring others, participating in research and murder, and one day will graduate with a degree. So, back to Weber. No? Should I address the murder? Okay, let's talk about the most prolific murderers who have ever lived, according to mainstream media. Millennials. Who are these people? Well, they're the cohort of individuals who were born between about 1980-82 through 1996 to 2000, depending on who you ask. And they are referred as a group to millennials. As millennials, they have been the subject of many harsh critiques over the past few decades. This grouping of millennials aims to include everyone who was born in generation X, Y, and Z, but there's still a little bit of discussion about where they begin and the year the generation cuts off. Regardless, they are thought of as lazy, self-centered, obsessed with their pieces of technology, as well as a slow, painful murder of sacred, capitalist institutions that their predecessors have grown to love. Jokes of avocado toast and the wish of millennials to earn enough to live and eat can be found in memes, news articles, political debates, and conversations started by elderly relatives at Thanksgiving. Even though previous generations have been complaining about new generations for millennia, this current generation seems to be moving away from certain ideals and expectations in a different way than their predecessors. Millennials live in a time where personal branding via social media, focusing on oneself, and self-promotion are necessary and normal behaviors within the society structure. This creativity is needed to survive, and it places them in a unique situation to buck back at the current functional and dysfunctional processes within society. Now look at this list of innocent industries which are facing a slow death due to these ruthless monsters. Let's take a step back and look at this issue through a sociological lens. Let's think about the why. Why is this generation killing these institutions in society? Weber isn't the only theorist who has a sociological viewpoint that can assist in explaining what is happening in society. It's always tempting to focus on Marxist theory when we're talking about capitalism and labor, but let's look at it through Weber's theory. First, we need to take a moment to review some of the key words and phrases from the last assigned reading. Please take a minute to pause this video and review the terms on this slide. Now, focusing on what bureaucracy is within our society, I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and open up a Word doc, take out a piece of paper, whatever way you're comfortable. Pause the video in a minute and answer these questions. What is bureaucracy? Not the definition that you get from the dictionary. Your definition. How would you explain a bureaucracy to someone from another universe or another culture that's unlike ours, based on what you read in our last assigned reading? Where do you see bureaucracies in your life? Have any of you been to your local DMV or BMV? Think of another example of bureaucracy that you have dealt with and the way it helped or hindered your original plan or goal. Thinking back to the last assigned reading, what did Weber say about bureaucratization? He stated both pros and cons. List at least one of each. Taking what you have read, apply it to millennials and subsequent generations. How do you think bureaucracy plays a role in their socialization? And the last thing I want you to think about is other factors that might be at play. Weber's theories apply, but There are many other theories that we have learned about this semester, which you may believe help us understand the bigger picture at the macro level. After you have finished answering these questions, please save or scan your document and upload your answers on Canvas under the Weber lecture assignment. Now, let's turn our attention to how millennials and Weber's theory intertwine. Bureaucracy slowly crept into parts of our society and everyday life over the past few hundred years. Over time, with the growth of society, a need was created to maintain order and efficiency. We refer to the structure which deals with this as bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is largely a creation of the Western world. However, we have seen how bureaucracy, or what Weber referred to as rationalization, how it's created dysfunctions within its own structure. Due to the increasing population in developed countries, many societies have moved towards the rationalization processes to be more efficient. This process of rationalization has given way to the rapid movement away from creativity and freedom of ideas in the workplace to a rigid structure and formal protocols. This bureaucratization of social processes can be seen both as a benefit to society as well as a detriment. The pyramid design of bureaucracies allows for our modern life to be possible without these structures in place. Rules cannot be maintained, which may inhibit efficiency throughout our businesses, government, religion, and education. Weber examined the structure of bureaucracy as well as the impact that it has had on society, which is the macro, and individuals, or the micro level. He highlighted the efficiency that is provided by this structure and the loss of individualism that it brings. He stated, quote, "Bureaucratization offers above all the optimum possibility for carrying through the principle of specializing administrative functions according to purely objective considerations," end quote. This has proven to be true for the most part. To be efficient and objective leads to an optimum workflow. Being good at the one thing you do, the principle of specializing in an administrative function, makes things more efficient. The benefit of being efficient is, well, time, energy, and money that we save by streamlining tasks and idolizing convenience. Now, there are downsides. Our reliance on bureaucracy has caused painful ripples for those who are stuck in the proverbial iron cage, or worse, stuck in a menial job, which robs them of their ability to not only be creative, but their ability to fully support themselves and their families within our economy. McDonaldization, it's a tough one, has caused previous social or societal structures to be reorganized. So things that were already in place have kind of gone towards this fine-tuning of efficiency. Ritzer, the theorist who coined this term, kind of shows how McDonald's is the best example to fully understand the efficiencies that are prioritized within rationalization, bureaucracy. So let's think about the drive-thru at McDonald's. How the first stop is ordering, so you deal with one person to do that one thing. Then the first window is payment. Sometimes that's the same person, sometimes it's different. Then the second window, you receive your food from somebody else that's different who has specialized in that job. And then if your food isn't ready, they ask you to pull forward so that the delay doesn't negatively impact the efficiency they are attempting to maintain with the other orders that are in line. This focus on efficiency throughout society has changed the way we get married, the way we farm, even the way people attend church. It has infiltrated our lives down to the most personal. The way we are raising children has even changed. In today's discussion board, please list other examples of McDonaldization that is outside the realm of fast food. How else have we as a society turned to efficiency and control? Please respond to two classmates and focus your answer on the positives and negatives of the examples they have listed. Bureaucracy is a predominant part of the lives of every person living in America. We have all had struggles because of it, and we all have benefited from it. And this holds true for the silent generation of the 1920s all the way through the generation being born today. This system of social function has proved important for managing a booming population by codifying rules, outlining acceptable behavior and guidelines, and by creating rational ways of handling the overwhelming amount of interactions people have on a daily basis. Society has formed a system that runs itself. People are always looking for a more efficient way to handle business, to feed their families, to gain employment, to get their work done, and get from place to place. This need to be streamlined and efficient is believed by Weber to have originated with the Protestants at the beginning of the development of capitalism. It's hard to talk about sociology without talking about religion. Weber argued that the ethics of the Protestants, alongside the rise of capitalism, helped to spawn the rationalization of society, meaning that social interactions begin to be governed by calculable rules. This was addressed in the assigned reading if you wanted to go back and learn a little bit more about it in detail. As society moves away from the values, traditions, and emotions and replaces them with bureaucracy, this leads to that iron cage Weber mentioned. This iron cage prevents humans from escaping this methodological process. He believed that this would continue on generation to generation until bureaucracy was such an invisible part of our society that we are no longer aware of it. Even though society has begun to move away from religion, the foundation of the codified rules has been set. Quote, "The rational religious pragmatism of salvation, flowing from the nature of the images of God and of the world, have under certain conditions had far-reaching results for fashioning a practical way of life." He was saying that what we built within our religious structures has assisted us in building a practical way of living. America was founded by religious individuals. Therefore, many of the values we hold dear are based upon latent religious undertones. Sacred values to promise salvation and fortune, grace, and traditions have stemmed from religion. These ethics can also be viewed as rational in the sense that religions are followed by people via rules and guidelines. But what happens when millennials are less religious than generations before them? The importance of bureaucracies has been taught by generation to generation, even after the religious foundations have fallen away. Weber argued that, quote, "religion has psychologically met a very general need," end quote, for society. We have seen this hold true in a variety of different situations. Millennials are not fitting into the structure of bureaucracy that their parents and grandparents have relied upon. Due to the limited space within the workforce, the increase in low-paying jobs for those right out of college, the lack of loyalty from employers, millennials are being forced out of the iron cage. Then they are being judged rather harshly for it. They have to be creative. They have to go against the codified processes in order to stand out and have a chance to make a living. When people are forced to step back from the formal rationality to utilize their substantive rationality, they are more apt to explore venues outside of social structures that are in place. So when we force millennials outside of the iron cage, they have to be able to explore different ways to work within our society, to function within that space. One issue that has been brought to the surface in recent years is that the new generation who have entered into the job market has been shaped by a dysfunctional economic, social systems, education systems that have been bandaged by bureaucratic structures. The control of technology within businesses and the focus on calculability cause the human side to suffer. These inefficiencies and dysfunctions within bureaucracies are an expected side effect, really, of rationalization. Millennials and Generation Z, really, have seen the human cost of McDonaldization and have seen the current system fail their grandparents and parents. No matter what Uncle Fred says at Thanksgiving, it is not the fault of new generations. It is the system that is dysfunctional and is not able to house their needs. Ritzer argues that the current bureaucracy differs from earlier methods of organizing work because of its formal structure, which allows for greater efficiency, which we see in the McDonald's example. Since people in earlier times acted out of loyalty, there were not really established hierarchies. However, I ask that you think about how even within bureaucracies, there is a sense of trust and loyalty to a company, especially for our grandparents and great-grandparents. Working for decades at the same business would afford a worker the ability to retire with a pension. It was not wise to be self-serving for generations before millennials. Typically, your task was to fit in, to put the interest of the institution above your own, to be a good team player, and at that point you would be rewarded with security and success. Now, labor unions have been destroyed. The right to work laws do not favor the employee, and millennials are putting more focus on themselves. They cannot be the master of one trade. They have to be a jack of all trades to make themselves marketable. They can't survive within the iron cage the same way that their parents and grandparents could. So this movement away from the bureaucratic structure has caused many older generations to judge millennials rather harshly. Author Fareed Zakaria said, quote, "The ultimate irony, surely, is that the very commentators who are urging young Americans to be less self-obsessed are busily building their own personal brands, complete with websites, Facebook pages, and Twitter accounts," end quote. So businesses are using the technologies that millennials grew up learning and then shaming them for using it to self-promote. Millennials are they're also accused of not following rules. So within the use of technology comes communication. So millennials are they're used to communicating quickly and transparently. So the traditional chain of command that you find within bureaucracy doesn't really work for them. If they have a question, they seek out the person with the answer, not the next person in the chain of command. This isn't to say that millennials are intentionally pushing back against legitimate domination, which you read about, or the idea of a necessary hierarchy. It has just become too much to deal with the dysfunctions within the power structures. We know that bureaucracies have their upsides, which is the reason why so many organizations structure themselves in such a way. However, Weber also argues that bureaucracies restrict individuals. Ritzer came after Weber, and he had studied Weber's work, and he says, quote, "In Weber's view, bureaucracies are cages in the sense that people are trapped in them, and their basic humanity is denied." And this goes against, or end quote, this goes against what the new generation stand for and what they value. The iron cage was the price people paid to have a secure job and enough pay to buy a home, have a car, and have a family vacation every few years. That price is no longer worth blindly obeying and following rules and guidelines that inhibit personal growth, especially since it no longer comes with enough pay to buy anything, even avocado toast. Now, I pose questions for you to consider. Will millennials change the nature of bureaucracy, or at least move to a closer examination of the dysfunctions within it? Will Generation Z follow behind millennials with a harsher critique of the current social framework? Well, Weber believed that once a bureaucratic structure was in place, it was near impossible to remove it. He argued, quote, "The ruled for their part cannot dispense with or replace the bureaucratic apparatus once it exists, for it rests upon expert training, a functional specialization of work, and an attitude set on habitual veracity in the master of a single yet methodically integrated function." End quote. This emphasis on mastering one task or function no longer is pushed within the middle class or with younger Americans. Efficiency has created the need for cross-training and for individuals to know more than just one task. It appears that bureaucracy may have planted within it the seeds to destroy it. Now remember what Marx said about capitalism. Remember to turn in your Weber lecture assignment, complete the discussion board, answer the questions on the last slide, this one, as part of your study guide for the final exam, and take the Weber assessment for the chapter. I did not review Weber's take on legitimate domination and authority within this lecture. However, the assessment will have questions on important takeaways from those Weber theories. Please email me any questions you may have about the reading excuse me, in regard to what I have gone over in this lecture, or what you have read in the assigned readings from Weber and Ritzer before completing the assessment. As always, here are my references if you wish to read further into the subject for your midterm video assignment. Keep in mind that I use Millennials to illustrate Weber's theories. You will need to select a different sociological topic in the assessment, essay, and final exam. Thank you.